Here is a man who was given a prophecy so horrifying that he gave up everything, his home, his family, his entire life, to make absolutely certain it could never come true. He did everything right. He ran as far from his fate as he possibly could, and every single step he took to escape the prophecy was, in fact, a step toward fulfilling it. His name was Oedipus, and his story is the Greeks' deepest and most unsettling meditation on fate, on whether a person can ever truly escape the destiny written for them, no matter how hard they try. It was foretold that Oedipus would kill his own father and bring ruin on his own house. And the terrible genius of the story is that all his efforts to avoid that fate were exactly what brought it about. How can a man run from a prophecy and run straight into it? And what happens when he finally learns the truth about himself? That is the story you'll hear tonight. The cursed prophecy, the crossroads, the riddle of the Sphinx, and the unbearable truth waiting at the end. If you enjoy these stories, take a moment to subscribe. It genuinely keeps this channel alive, and tell me in the comments which myth you'd like next. Now settle in and let's go to the city of Thebes. Long ago, the city of Thebes was ruled by a king named Laius and his queen, Jocasta. They had everything a royal couple could want, except the one thing they longed for most, a child. And so Laius went to consult an oracle to ask the gods whether he would ever have a son. The answer he received was not a blessing, but a curse. The oracle told him that if he ever fathered a son, that son was destined to kill him, to murder his own father, and to bring ruin upon the entire house of Thebes. It was a horrifying prophecy, and Laius resolved to make certain it could never come true. When, in time, Jocasta did bear a son, the king did not celebrate. Instead, gripped by terror of the prophecy, he made a dreadful decision. He took the newborn baby, bound its little feet together, and gave it to a servant with orders to carry it up onto the wild slopes of Mount Cithaeron and leave it there to die, exposed on the mountainside where no one would ever find it. It seemed the surest way to escape the prophecy. A dead infant could grow up to kill no one. But in trying so hard to escape his fate, Laius had set in motion the very chain of events that would doom him. The servant carried the baby up the mountain as he had been ordered. But when the moment came, he could not bring himself to leave a helpless infant to die. Instead, he met a shepherd from the neighboring kingdom of Corinth, and he gave the baby to him, trusting that the child would be taken far away and that no one in Thebes would ever know it had survived. The Corinthian shepherd took the baby home, and in time the child was brought to the king and queen of Corinth, Polybus and Merope, who had no children of their own. They adopted the foundling as their own son and raised him as a prince of Corinth, never telling him that he was not their natural child. They named him Oedipus, a name that means swollen foot, because of the old injury to his bound feet from that night on the mountain. And so Oedipus grew up in Corinth, healthy and beloved, a royal prince with a bright future, believing with all his heart that Polybus and Merope were his true parents. He had no idea that he had been born in another city, to another king and queen, nor that a terrible prophecy hung over his head. For many years, he lived in happy ignorance. And then, one day, a single careless remark set everything in motion. At a banquet, a drunken guest let slip a cruel taunt, that Oedipus was not really the son of Polybus at all, that he was a foundling, adopted, not of royal blood. The remark shook Oedipus deeply. His parents reassured him, but the doubt would not leave him, and at last he decided to do what people in these stories always do. He went to consult the great oracle at Delphi to ask the gods the truth of his parentage. But the oracle did not answer the question he asked. Instead, it told him something far more terrible, the same prophecy that had been spoken over his cradle, though he did not know it. "You are destined," the oracle told him, "to kill your own father and to bring ruin on your own house." Oedipus was horrified beyond words. He loved Polybus and Merope, the only parents he had ever known, and the thought of doing such monstrous things was unbearable. And so he made a brave and noble decision, the very decision that would damn him. He resolved never to return to Corinth, never to go near the people he believed were his parents, so that the prophecy could never come true. He turned his back on his home and set off as a wanderer, fleeing his fate. He did not know that he was walking straight toward it. As Oedipus traveled away from Delphi, far from the Corinth he was trying to protect, he came to a place where three roads met, a narrow crossroads and a lonely landscape. And there, coming the other way, he met a stranger, an older man riding in a chariot with a few attendants. What happened next was, on its surface, an ordinary thing, a dispute over the right-of-way, the kind of quarrel that flares up between proud men on a narrow road. Neither would yield. Tempers rose. The older man struck at Oedipus, and Oedipus, hot-blooded and provoked, struck back. In the violence that followed, Oedipus killed the older man and nearly all of his attendants, and then continued on his way, thinking little of it, a deadly roadside brawl, quickly over, quickly put out of mind. But the older man in the chariot had been no ordinary traveler. He had been a king, the king of Thebes, Laius, and he had been Oedipus's own father. Without knowing it, without the faintest idea of who the man was, Oedipus had just fulfilled the first half of the prophecy. He had killed his father at the crossroads. And he walked on toward Thebes, entirely unaware of what he had done, and entirely unaware that he was walking toward the second half of his doom. The city of Thebes, when Oedipus arrived, was in the grip of a monster, a creature called the Sphinx, with the body of a lion, the wings of an eagle, and the head of a woman, had settled outside the city and was terrorizing it. The Sphinx posed a riddle to every traveler who passed and devoured everyone who could not answer it correctly. The city was being slowly strangled. No one could come or go in safety, and the Thebans were desperate. Their king, Laius, had in fact been traveling to seek help against the Sphinx when he met his death on the road, though no one yet knew that. Into this crisis walked Oedipus, and he faced the Sphinx and its famous riddle. "What walks on 4 legs in the morning?" the creature asked, "on 2 legs at midday, and on 3 legs in the evening?" Oedipus thought, and he answered correctly, "It is man, who crawls on all 4s as a baby, walks upright on 2 legs in the prime of life, and leans on a staff, a 3rd leg, in old age." It was the right answer, and at the sound of it, the Sphinx was destroyed, hurling itself from its rock, its reign of terror over. Oedipus had saved Thebes. The grateful city hailed him as a hero and offered him the greatest reward they had. Their king had recently been killed on the road, they said, and his throne stood empty. They made Oedipus their new king and gave him the hand of the widowed queen in marriage. Her name was Jocasta, and so the rest of the prophecy was fulfilled, as quietly and as blindly as the first part had been. Oedipus married Jocasta, neither of them knowing the truth of who they were to each other, and for many years they lived together in apparent happiness, ruling Thebes well. They had children together. Oedipus was a good and beloved king, wise and just, the man who had saved the city and governed it with care. By every appearance, the prophecy had been escaped. The disasters foretold seemed never to have come. But fate is patient, and the truth was still buried, waiting. After many years, a terrible plague fell upon Thebes. Crops failed, animals and people sickened and died, and the city suffered grievously. Oedipus, the good king, was determined to save his people, and he sent to the oracle to ask the cause of the plague and how it might be lifted. The answer came back. The plague was a punishment. There was a great pollution in the city, an unpunished crime. The murderer of the old king Laius was living in Thebes, unknown and unavenged, and the plague would not lift until that murderer was found and driven out. And Oedipus, the good king, the man who solved riddles, swore a mighty oath that he would find the killer, whoever it was, and root the evil out of his city. He did not know that he was hunting himself. What follows is one of the most masterful pieces of storytelling the ancient world ever produced, the slow, relentless unraveling of the truth As Oedipus, determined to find the murderer of Laius, questions, witness after witness, and piece by piece assembles the answer he least wants to find. The old blind prophet Tiresias tried to warn him to stop, hinting darkly that the king did not truly want to know what he was uncovering. Jocasta, as the pieces began to fit together, begged him to abandon the search. But Oedipus, who could not stop seeking the truth, pressed on, until at last the full and unbearable picture came together. The man he had killed at the crossroads all those years ago had been King Laius. And Laius and Jocasta had once exposed an infant son on the mountain, with bound feet, a son who had not died but had been raised in Corinth under the name of Swollen Foot. Oedipus understood, all at once, the whole of it. He had killed his own father on the road. He had married his own mother. The prophecy he had spent his entire life fleeing had come true in every particular, fulfilled by his own desperate efforts to escape it. When the truth came out, Jocasta, unable to bear it, took her own life. And Oedipus, in his anguish and horror at what he had done and what he had failed to see, blinded himself and went out from Thebes a broken exile to wander the earth in darkness. The story of Oedipus has haunted the world for 2,500 years, and it is worth being clear about why. It is not really a story about a wicked man getting what he deserves, because Oedipus did nothing wrong. Not really. He did not knowingly kill his father. He did not knowingly do any of it. He spent his entire life trying, with everything he had, to avoid those very crimes. Everything he did out of love, or courage, or a desire to do right. And it damned him anyway. That is the terror at the heart of the story. The question the Greeks could not stop turning over. How much of our lives is truly our own to choose, and how much is written for us before we are ever born? Oedipus is the man who runs from his fate and finds that the running is the road to it, that the harder he struggles against the prophecy, the more perfectly he fulfills it. There is no comfortable lesson here, no simple wrong to avoid. There is only the deep and ancient unease of a man who sought the truth with all his strength and was destroyed by finding it, who saw clearly, in the end, only at the moment he lost his sight. Perhaps that is why we still tell it. It refuses to let us pretend that we are entirely the masters of our own stories. Some things, the Greeks believed, are simply fated, and the wisest among us are only the ones who come, at last, to see it. If this is the kind of story you want more of, take a moment to subscribe and tell me in the comments which myth I should tell next. Sleep well.